Well, good morning for everybody. This is the spot where my career in putting on festivals and conferences began. The festival about 3 blocks up the river there, down the river, in English Park. I can remember after the first festival I ever did, I was so naive. Patty Birchfield from the tourism division sponsored our lunch. I worked out of their office for IBMA. We were walking down the street here with this grocery sack full of cash. So we hadn't anticipated how to run a box office for a festival. We figured it out. It had some really good years here in Owensboro. So it means a lot to me to be here. It means a lot to have these wonderful folks up on Wisdom of the Elders this year. Thanks, David. To my immediate left, we have all 4 of these folks. Where's Michael? Come on up, Michael. But counting Michael, all 4 of us have been on the SERFA board at one time or another. So there's going to be a lot of SERFA content in this year's Wisdom of the Elders. Roberta Schultz with the ensemble Raison d'Etre. Your print is so bad. And they also put on a concert series, house concert in a public venue in a theater, which is a great concept. I think they do 4 shows a year up there, including many of our fine members perform up there. Then Grady Ormsby is like Mr. Folk in Eastern North Carolina. For years, down East Folk Art Society, he was putting on concerts in Newbern, Morehead City, and one other both sides of the bridge covered. Incredibly good energy guy, Mr. Free Hugs. Kari Estrin, the OG of both folk radio promotion, and the first president, the founding president of SERFA. And Michael Johnathon, you've probably seen or heard the Wood Songs Old Time Music Hour. He's been doing that for 26 years. He's receiving the founding president's award this year from SERFA. Michael Johnathon. I'm going to ask Michael to kick things off because one time he told me one of my favorite stories, thousands that folks have told me, and it's stuck with me, and I've repeated it a few times myself. But that very first school show you did in Eastern Kentucky, when you didn't really understand the economics of school shows.
Let's try that. The Cliff Notes version, to be brief. I grew up along the Hudson River in New York, and my neighbor was a wonderful older fellow that claimed to be a musician, but he played the banjo. And Pete Seeger was a very nice fellow, neighbor. And he said if I wanted to be a folk singer, I needed to go to the Appalachian Mountains. So I did, but guess what? There's no place to play out there. Everything is dry, which means there's no clubs, there's no bars, there's no nothing. So I decided I was going to play nature songs in the school. And I had never done a concert before, so I went out there and asked the principal if I could perform for students. He goes, yeah, sure you can. He goes, what do you want? How much do you want? And I'd never charged anything. I said, I don't know, what are you going to, what would you offer? He says, $2. And I thought, well, I'd never performed before. This is the one you're talking about, right? He said, I've never performed before. I'll take your $2 just to have it on my resume that I performed at this school. Maybe other schools would do it. So at the time, it was the time of the concert, and 800 kids pile into the gym, and I sucked to high heaven because I've never performed ever in public before. And then after the concert's over, he goes, well, come on into my office, we'll set it up. We'll settle up. And I'm thinking, keep your $2, man. I'm humiliated. I just want to go home and cry. And so we're sitting there, and of course, he's the kind of guy that would talk and talk and talk. And finally, he pulls out this bag and plops it on his desk. He goes, here's your here you go. And I said, what's that? He goes, it's your $2 times 800. So I played for 25 minutes and made $1,600, and I thought to myself, I can do this. I went to the next school. I said, I just played this school over here. I'd like to play for your kids. He goes, good. He says, what do you want? I said, how much would you offer? He goes, $1. I said, how many kids you got in your school? I got about 700. All right, I'll do it. And that's how we ended up performing all over the place.
I just love that story. Thank you, Michael.
I'm surprised you remembered it.
I'm good at remembering stories for some reason. Kari, as we know, was our founding president, and we could do a whole multi-hour Wisdom of the Elders with just Kari, but we only have an hour today, so keeping on the Cliff Notes version, how did you come to start this organization?
It was ironic because when I actually met Art and Becky was in my Boston days, and I was a concert producer up there with collection concerts and published magazines. And through that, I organized, before there was a folk alliance, New England and the Northeast. So that's really my first region, even though there was no regional. And so I had just moved, I lived in Boston I was up in New England for 12 years, and I moved down to Nashville when I was 34. A long time ago. And I was at Folk Alliance, and someone said, you know, we have this region that hasn't been organized. Would you organize it? And I'm like, that's kind of ironic. And what was really bothering me is I didn't know where any of the venues were down here. And so when I organized Black Sheep, I did it through publishing magazine. There were no computers. But I held meetings, and we, you know, of course, I met Grady and Roberta at my second SERFA. And it was a lot of you telling me what this region meant to you and what you wanted for it. And it took years actually to organize, and I'm so proud of it. So.
Well, thanks for all you did for this organization. My wife Becky Johnson, I think, met you now 48 years ago at the Berkshire Mountain Festival.
Oh my God, backstage. Yeah, that was my start. I worked with a woman named Nancy Talbot, and she was one of the first female promoters in the country, I think on the second. And that's where we met Becky. How cool is that? Bluegrass was in, and that relates to SERFA. You know, I love singer-songwriters, contemporary music, Slavic opera, and coffee house stuff, and I'm not really a performer, I'm in the business side. But my love of bluegrass music and Southern Appalachian music has been the bedrock of starting SERFA. And we have Denise Williams here, who was a really early advocate of helping us keep SERFA straight. And thank you to all of you who have held the tradition.
So, Grady, how did you find out about SERFA initially?
First of all, when Art invited me to be part of this panel, I was honored and flattered. And I told him, Art, I got the elder part down pat. And between now and then, I'm going to work a little bit on the wisdom. It goes back, I don't know, 15 years or more. I ran into my friend Linda McGowan. She said, well, what do you think about being president? Of what? Oh, down East Folk Art Society. That's what happens sometimes when you miss a meeting. It's like, railroad. But I eventually became the booking manager, and that's why I hooked up with SERFA. I went the first time in Mountain View, Arkansas, and it's been every time since. Because my job was to recruit talent. And so it's kind of nice that I can just enjoy it now. I don't have to work the crowd, meet all the new people, and pass out cards and clicks. So, Down East Folk Art Society, unfortunately, fell apart during COVID, but I could not give up my family.
And this definitely is your family, Grady.
Several years ago, you can find it on YouTube. J.D. Nuttall did a promotional film, and he interviewed me, and he asked me for what I thought. And I said, well, SERFA is like a family reunion, a jam session, and a tent revival. Well, that last part is when we went off the mountain from Black Mountain you were revived, you were invigorated, you were ready to get on with it, because that's the energy that SERFA provides for everybody.
Now, Grady's the first elder that I not only recruited, but had to bring to the conference too. We had a good ride up here from North Carolina with Becky. So, Roberta, how did you stumble into SERFA?
Well, I wrote a grant from Kentucky Foundation for Women to go to some songwriting workshops. And I signed up for a bunch of them with race on deck with some songwriting workshops. And one of the workshops I went to was in Montreal. And you probably don't remember this at all, but you were in the exhibit hall talking to people about starting SERFA. And I just waited in a little line to talk to you about it. And after that, I just kept looking to see what was going to happen. We couldn't go in 2008 when it got started, but we finally made it the next year, which was the Ozarks.
So both Grady and Roberta, what kept you coming back? What did you find there in Mountain View at that second SERFA conference that's hooked you where you're still here in 2025?
Well, as I said, I got involved originally because it was a great source of talent. I wound up booking people all over the country, and still staying in touch with a lot of those folks. It's just really good feeling. And then why I kept coming is, once again, you got some of my family, and I love you.
Yeah, pretty much the same for me. We just did a showcase room last night, and all the people who played there are so wonderful. So it's always so inspiring to come hear all these people who play so well and sing so much passion. And I just enjoyed that. But I also enjoy all the people I see every year and how we've all become friends and family. And that's kind of coming back all this time.
And Art, can I make a note that from my perspective, Grady and Roberta, having been in Mountain View where I first met them, first of all, Michael is one of my founding board members for SERFA, so thank you, Michael, for serving all those years. But the secret, I think, to what makes it so much like your family is that you've given back so much. Grady, you've done open mic for years and years and years. And Roberta, you were our wrangler, our showcase wrangler. And you know, that volunteerism really creates a family. You have a place here and people love you for what you do. Hint, hint.
So Michael, we were discussing how you were making a great fortune playing in schools in eastern Kentucky where everyone goes to look for money. Well, they do.
There's a reason folk rhymes with broke, so you have to remember that overall.
So how did you get from there to starting this remarkable Wood Songs old-time radio hour that's now, I mean, this, recently you went and gathered up instruments for people who had suffered during Hurricane Elaine. That's a big step for being a radio show.
Well, you know, let me answer. Can I answer with an example? Short answer is I was Judy Collins' opening act. We were in Ravinia. I heard a radio show being broadcast in the town car on the way there called Prairie Home Companion. I never heard it before. And I thought, well, how hard can it be to start a live audience syndicated radio show? It's very hard. So, but what I learned was that love is the greatest transaction of the arts. Love is what makes everything work. And as an example, because you brought up the instruments, this area of Kentucky where we are 3 years ago was obliterated by a tornado that was 2 miles wide and stayed on the ground for 200 miles. And so we created the Wood Songs broadcast with over 500 radio stations, an American Forces Radio Network, PBS across the country, RFD television. We reached out to our audience for the first time and said, help us restore the music of the front porches of that region of northern Tennessee, across western Kentucky, and southern Indiana that got obliterated by these tornadoes. We wanted to gift, not give out free, we were gifting these instruments. We collected over 1,000 instruments, put new strings on them, polished them up, fixed them up. I'm going to give you one example why love And doing good things with your music matters. And Wood Songs, I think, is one of the many examples that are out there. We got to Mayfield, Kentucky. Hundreds of people were in line to get banjos and guitars. And in the truck, we had a beautiful and pristine condition Martin HD 28 guitar that someone donated. If you know guitars, this is the Rolls Royce of guitars. We thought we were going to find an 18-year-old Tony Rice, budding Billy Strings kind of kid and give him the gift of a lifetime. Well, in the line, waiting for 2 hours, was a little 82-year-old man. And he finally got to the table, and I said, "What is it that you want?" He says, "I need me a Martin guitar." I said, "Well, we have Yamahas and Gibsons." And he goes, No, it has to be a Martin. And here's why. Every night for 52 years, this man would sit on his couch and play a song to his wife on his Martin guitar. For 52 years, he did this every night because he loved his wife and he loved to sing, and he would play her one song every night before going to bed on his Martin guitar. The tornado came and took his house, it took his Martin guitar, and they found his wife's body 200 feet away from his home. And all he wanted was to sit at her grave every night with a Martin guitar and sing to her like he did for 52 years. And this is the power of what love builds. It's the power of the folk music community, which is ideally populated with community-driven, passionate people who love what they do, because most of you don't do it for the money, you do it because you love it. And so doing good things with your music is one of the best things that you learn from SERFA and organizations like this, because doing good work is by far more powerful than trying to have a hit record.
Karen, do you think there's anything you did in planning this that caused the vibe these other folks have been describing at SERFA? And if so, what was it?
Thank you for asking that question, because the vibe that I had wanted has been continued through all the SERFA years, and I'm so grateful. You know, the one thing, when everyone was telling me what they wanted for SERFA, they wanted a down-home friendly conference, just like the South is. And they wanted to eat together, and they wanted to be out in beautiful surroundings. And my thing was, no, there was no one was a stranger once you walked through the door. And in the beginning, we had like 100 people, and I'm terrible with names, but by the time everyone left, I was calling everyone by name. And you know, I wasn't stressed out. I mean, maybe I was, but I wanted everyone. I got to create my utopia. This is my utopia. You are my utopia.
Never been part of Utopia before. Roberta, you work in two different worlds, literary and music, and I think about equally in both. Do you find any interesting differences between those two communities, or more similarities?
The communities are similar, except I find that in our concert series, we have what's called the Poet Song Series. We feature a regional poet or a local poet, and then invite touring songwriters to come to our venue. We do this because poets go to hear each other all the time. And I don't really experience that a whole lot in the real world, not the non-utopian world of music like I do here. You all do that for each other. You come to support each other and listen to each other and stay up late to hear your friends. But out in the real world, it's more competitive. So that's the biggest difference I see. And I know there's competition in the literary world too, but poets in general, because there is no money in poetry. They think folk music is bad. I mean, there's no money in it, except once in a while somebody gets a prize. But they do support each other and they come near each other.
That's a beautiful thing in both worlds. Grady, during your years as the booking manager for Down East, what made it successful? What made it work?
For 3 years, we did a demographic survey trying to find out who our audience was. And so in the spring and the fall of each year, we did a survey. Guess what? You know who our audience was? Old white people. And we tried to come up with strategies to do that, and we quickly eliminated the idea of getting young people because we didn't have anything to do with beer and fist fighting. And then we realized for the older people, it was in 40s and 50s, when your youngins grow up and they leave, you have more free time and access to more resources. And so that's when we would draw those people in. Our audience had no idea about the artists that I would, because they didn't know who, the top 10 folk artists, who were they, But we had established a reputation where people said, well, if that a person is playing for Down East Folk Arts, it's going to be a good show, and it always was.
How important was the 3-location thing? I mean, it is an advantage for the presenter to be talking about 3 gigs rather than 1.
We could get people to come from New England and the Midwest, and James Lee Stanley came from California, David Jacob Strutton came from Oregon. We had a show on Friday night in one town, and then a show on Saturday night in the other town. The towns were about 50 miles apart, so there really wasn't a crossover there. And so, will you drive all the way to Eastern North Carolina for one night? But if I was going to give you 2, that was really a boost for our success.
So the next step after the Wood Songs Old Time Radio Hour, you put together an organization that is still quite active, Michael, the Song Farmers. And you've already talked about some of your philosophy behind it. Tell us more about the Song Farmers.
Well, because at 3 in the morning, you're sitting on your couch with nothing to do and you got to come up with ideas, right? Songfarmers.org. It's a national community of America's front porch. It's a national community of musicians and players that care about their families, their hometowns, their neighbors, and what we do is we encourage and help them use music to bring their communities together. Right now there's over 100 active chapters, Australia, across America, even in Ireland, where once a month folks get together and they'll sit in a big circle and they sing the same song together as a group. And you have things like Little Cabot, Arkansas, a town of about 500 folks, would have well over 200 coming to their song farmer gatherings. And Tellico Plains, Tennessee, the same thing. They would have their circle of musicians surrounded by 2 more circles of audience members. In Florida, there's 14 chapters of Song Farmers alone. And this is part of the love potion because people come for free. It is a free gift to the community, but it's a way for musicians who are the chapter leaders to become mentors in their community. And I'll tell you what, this is a truth. Doing good work is more powerful and more effective than trying to have a hit record. And I'll prove it to you. It costs hundreds of thousands of dollars to make it on the Billboard charts. People give up marriages, homes, broken relationships. They go bankrupt trying to do this. Who was the number 6 record on the Billboard charts 3 weeks ago? Do you know? Do you care? But those who do good work in their community become powerful mentors. They become important in their community. They become within the reach, the symbolic reach of their front porch. There's a saying from, and I'm sorry, Art, to go on, But there's a Slavic saying from 200 years ago, if everybody in the whole world simply took care of their own homes, you wouldn't have to worry about the world anymore. In the 60s, that became a bumper sticker, think globally, act locally. And so this is our encouragement, what the Song Farmers community to do is to use your music for important things. You would be surprised the press and media that the chapter leaders get by doing this. More so than if they sat around trying to vibrate air for 3.5 minutes, hoping for adulation. It does not happen. And in a world where, we said this in our recent workshop, nobody dreamed 5 years ago the biggest retailer of CDs in America was going to be Cracker Barrel. There's not a single record store chain left in America. They're gone. And focusing your music on a dying business model will not work. But using your music for what Pete Seeger did in the Clearwater, what John Denver did in World Hunger, what Saigon did with unions and good work that Saigon has done for so many years, doing good work is better for your music career than trying to run after dollars that don't exist.
Very interestingly, we're all here, we're doing showcases at the Woodward Theater, at the museum. Terry Woodward was a record chain operator who brilliantly, let's go to these 10,000 and 20,000 population places that are big enough to have a mall, but too small to have the national. It's going to be a wonderful thing. Kari, what provoked you to start Black Sheep Review?
I give it to my father, who was an English professor, and the power of the pen when that was powerful before the computer. And I like to fill holes. Like if something isn't happening and I see a need for it, I like to create it. And so in New England, there was this folk scene bubbling under. And people would call me because I promoted at a 1200 seat hall at Harvard, the first folk series in the country like that at the time. And I had Doc Watson and Bela Fleck and Newgrass Revival and helped break Nancy Griffith out of Austin. Just an incredible time. And so people from all over New England would call me up and tell me about themselves. And I'm like, we're not on radio. Shit. I got to do something about it. So I put together a 4-page newsletter. I was sending out 6,000 flyers about my concerts all over New England, and I'm like, well, that's kind of selfish. This person's doing this, and this person's doing that. So I started a newsletter, and the first quarter of it, the bottom quarter was my concerts, and then it was about someone touring. And then I wanted to draw the scene together, and I got really burnt out, and I came back, and after taking the summer off with a 32-page magazine. So I just wanted to draw the community together, which is a kind of a similarity with here.
Certainly is. And then from there, you moved into artist management and then invented this whole profession of full radio promotion. How did that come to pass?
Well, it's related. So, of course, Becky knows me from my old days when I graduated college and I went to Boston and worked for the MIT Symphony Orchestra. But when I was 17, I read an article in Sing Out magazine in 1972. And it talked about this new record label named Roundup Records. And so, very old-fashioned back then, I wrote them a letter and said, and it was written by John Cohen from the New Lost City Ramblers. And at the end of it was like, well, I hope it works. And I'm like, it's gonna work. And so I wrote them a letter, and I became Rounder's first volunteer. And I went up to their 186 Willow Ave address and learned how to pick records. And then I also became, then I moved to Boston outside of college. I was a music major in college, and I was singing in Boston in coffee houses and choirs and, all this stuff. And I got a job as Brownder's first national publicist doing radio back in 1978. And so from there, that's when I started the concert company, and then I would go to these independent conferences, and they were called NAIRD at the time, of all the small labels. And I'd learned all this stuff through Rounder, and then Barry Paz from Sugar Hill, whom you know very well, was there, and these other labels. And so Barry handed me a Skaggs and Rice record, and another label handed me this acoustics record. And I had managed but from Tony Rice. It was all instrumental jazz, and I had managed bands in college, so I was really wanting to do this, and my senior honors project was to produce a fully ticketed folk festival to the country talking about indigenous music in the US. That was my college. And so I got a call one day after the conference, and I just fell in love with Tony's music, and I loved the Skaggs and Rice, and I really loved the instrumental jazz. And I got a call from his manager asking if I would book a tour for them. Well, I was a concert producer, and I'm like, yeah, I'll do that, but he has to play my concert too. And so then I became Tony's manager, and I managed a lot of other people over the years, which morphed into what I do now, besides the radio promotion, which I picked back up 21 years later from Rounder, and now I've been doing it for almost 26 years. I found that managing one artist at a time wasn't what I really wanted to do. I mean, I had the best with Tony and a world music band called the Three West Office 3, and we were #1 in Billboard magazine on the world music charts. Didn't make a lot of money, but we were #1. And I decided to help more people in a more holistic way. So people would ask me when I was at Black Sheep for advice, and I thought I really gave them great advice. They would turn around, shoot themselves in the foot, and fall on the floor. And I've always loved psychology today, and I'm like, what went wrong? And that's how I started my holistic career of talking to artists and not only giving them nuts and bolts and strategies, and I also help them make records and pre-production and producing and song editing, but what's going on in their lives, how does that come out in their music, their image and branding, and how it all fits together. So that's, it's more of my utopia. How can I empower artists to do their best?
Grady, what gave you the greatest satisfaction serving on the SERFA board, and what did you feel was the greatest challenge?
Wow. I go back to the satisfaction of being on the board was the people. And we did some telephone conferencing, but we also got together physically from time to time. And it was just great to be with the people. And I don't know, I can't elaborate on that. I would like to say something while I'm here and talk about these postcards going down. I'm looking across the road and I'm seeing the people that it just didn't work out. There's Antonio, Raison Detra, there's Lyle and Scott, Jan back there, and Jay and Catherine. Didn't have time to get around to you. You're on the list.
So how did Raison Detra come to exist? You've been together a long time.
Well, my sister would tell you that we've been together all her life. To point out that I am the elder. And, but we did play together a lot as children. We played a lot in high school, and we played after college. And then when we were middle-aged officially, we decided to form this women's trio because we were the front women for a cruise on the Ohio River that was called the Hoedown Cruise. We did country rock music, singing 3-part harmony, doing a lot of Emmy Lumaris and Ronstadt stuff. And we had these guys behind us who played really fantastic country music. So after we And actually, some of them actually called Bo, we were on the Cow TV. It was supposed to be the Con TV, but they called it the Cow TV, so it could be country. When we finished our season on the river, we just decided we really loved the three-part harmony we've been doing, and we wanted to expand it more. So we decided to step away from the band and just start a women's trio. And we've been playing, we're on the roster for Kentucky Performing Arts. We've been part of Ohio Arts Presenters Network and have showcased a lot in Ohio. We've actually managed to tour all the way to Dorr County, Wisconsin, and all the way down to Mobile, Alabama, as far west only as the Coffeeville kids, some of you know about. And I guess as far east as we've been is probably North Carolina. Correct me if I'm wrong. But we played together now this is our 35th year, and we're still playing. We can't tour anymore because we got some health limitations from Vicky's husband, but we can do an awful lot locally and regionally, so we've been putting our talents there. And by starting our poet song series, concert series, we feel that we can extend that invitation to touring artists who might want to stop in to near the Cincinnati area for a nice gig with an appreciative audience of poets. So that's it.
It's impressive, two sisters working together that closely for that long. And neither one of us seems to kill the other.
Not yet. I'm apart, you know.
Standing between.
Grady, you have a question you can ask while we're here?
No, but I do have something else. I always have something else to say. For those of you that were there tonight, last night, I just want to let you know that all of my jokes and quips were vetted by my grandchildren. They said, "Pop, that's great. Go with it." So if you didn't like the humor, it's their fault.
I'm struck sitting here by all these little connections in this world. Kari mentioned the old Dare Conference. At the Dare Conference, Terry Woodward, for whom the Woodward Theater is named, met Sonny Osborne. And Terry told Sonny that Owensboro wanted to be the capital of bluegrass. And Sonny told Terry that we're trying to start a professional organization for bluegrass music called IBMA, and we don't have any money and we don't have a home. And so we came together in March of 1986. We formed that partnership here. Roberta was talking about getting a grant that brought her to SERFA the first time from the Kentucky Foundation for Women. The director of the Kentucky Foundation for Women was my board chair when I started an Apple shop, which will be getting an award here on the stage tomorrow. And it's such a beautifully connected world, even here in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. What keeps you going, Michael?
Coffee. Good coffee. I'll tell you what. One of the values I found about Folk Alliance and SERFA is understanding the truth of what is happening among the community of musicians. And when you love something, you respond, you react, you try to do things that work and that are helpful. And what you learn is that almost everybody in this room is not going to make a living with their music, but it's going to be a very powerful part of their life. That's the truth. And you're here to learn how to invest in your reputation, to invest in your name recognition, which is why, in a fractured media world, the left side of the radio dial is being bought out by Christian broadcasters now, and AM radio is going away, and more than ever, you need the help of someone like a Kari Estrin, which is going to help your record get through, because DJs are being obliterated with emails full of MP3s and it doesn't work. So you need someone with personal relationships to represent you. Same thing with the media. You can get a half-page story in a newspaper these days, nobody reads it because nobody gets the newspaper. So you need a publicist to break through the crust that's blocking you from getting to these journalists and stuff to represent you. And the more fractured the music world gets, the more you, as an artist, need help. The caveat is that you're investing in yourself. You're not there to make money. You're there to invest in yourself and get name recognition and to become known by the general community in that music world.
I mean, community is such a key part of it, because we want to make a living, we all need to eat, and have a roof over our head, and nice things like that. But we're not doing it for the money, we're doing it to be part of a community that nurtures us. This is the lovely thing that keeps bringing us back together at our regionals and at the international conference each year. And I feed off the energy to come into these events. This is the community, the small town. Kari says utopia, I say small town. We mean about the same thing, where I want to live. You know, all of you, I want you for my neighbors. My neighbors I have are okay. Not y'all. You can't go talk to them about something that happened in folk music 40 years ago and have without explaining. So Pete Seeger was this guy with a long neck banjo. So, thoughts about community, Grady, because you really did have a community down there down east. It was an ecosystem.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's some of the things Michael was talking about, that sense of caring, that sense of love and feeling that people like to come because they felt welcome, they felt good. And of course, they enjoyed the music. So I don't know, we never really had any particular strategies to develop community. Maybe we were just lucky.
So much of it is just the people, the right people there.
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't plan the party, I just invited the right people.
And I'm looking at our music, there's Andy and Karen, and I'm trying to meet all the people that I'm still regretting that. I'll tell my wife that we won the lottery and she buys a ticket every week, that I was going to buy a hall somewhere and have a folk concert every Saturday night, whether anybody showed up or not. So cross your fingers that we win the lottery.
Heck, if I had a quarter for every minute I spent staring at that particular bend in the Ohio River, I could fund this whole thing. Kari, of all the many things you've done in 50 years in this business that you started so young, what gives you the greatest satisfaction as you look back?
There's so many things, I'll try to be brief. One is this. Managing Tony Rice. Stuff is sweet. Creating communities, like Black Sheep created a community, and tour managing and doing a lot of firsts. You know, they weren't very many female tour managers. It was a tough life too. And I'm so grateful. I've had an amazing life. I've toured Japan twice. I've, been all over. There's just so many highlights, and speaking of community, I just wanted to point out, of course, you're on the board of Folk Alliance Art, and Jennifer Rowe and Tisha Nepal are here, and they create this sense of community, and SERFA and NERFA and SWERFA wouldn't be here without Folk Alliance, so just grateful for just so many highlights in my life.
Well, I think everyone's grateful for all you've done over the years. Heard otherwise, whether over the radio or in person. And you can see the difference in careers with artists you work with and when they stopped working with you. It made a big difference. Michael, what's the future for Woodsong's Old Time Radio Hour?
Well, this Monday, we're taping show number 1140. It's all live audience in a theater for For those of you who don't know, Wood Songs is all volunteer run. The crew is volunteers, the TV folks are volunteers, the audio crew is volunteers, the artists that come on the show are volunteers. Matter of fact, this Monday, Me Mary is going to be on Wood Songs along with country artist John Berry. And it goes free to public radio, free to public television, free to RFD television network, free to schools, and free to American Forces Radio Network in 177 nations on 2 channels in each country. And now you know why folk rhymes with broke. So there's every broadcast we feature a youngster, and I think this is my big encouragement to SERFA and other folk organizations. Don't leave the kids out, for God's sakes. They're the future of America's front porch. They're the future. Folk music is the soundtrack of rural America, and don't leave the kids out. So we feature a youngster from somewhere in America on every single broadcast, and that segment became so popular and so high rated that it's now been morphed into its own public television, public radio series called Wood Songs Kids. It's sort of a Mr. Rogers meets the Grand Ole Opry. And I mean, the kids that come on Wood Songs Kids, a lot of them end up performing on the Grand Ole Opry. You should see 11-year-old Bela Flex or 14-year-old Wyatt Ellis, who's picking with Billy Strings and, you know, Marty Stewart. And you know, these kids are amazing, but they belong on folk music's front porch, and they have to be invited. And we have to open up opportunities for them to participate. But the thing is, you can't be afraid of free. Don't be afraid of free. Just because you're doing something for free doesn't mean it doesn't have value. I do Wood Songs for free. I don't get a penny for doing that show. Nobody associate, even the artists who come on the show are volunteers, whether it's Bela Fleck or Judy Collins or Roger McGuinn or Randy Carlisle. They've all come on, Blind Boys of Alabama. They come on for free. Why? Because there's value in the audience that it generates. The more you do for free, the bigger your audience is going to become as individual artists, and you have more value. You become an asset the bigger your audience becomes. And you can do it by trying to have a hit record, which probably won't work. Or you can do it by engaging in really good work and doing good things with your music that are truly of value, and you will be shocked at the amount of attention you end up getting because of it. And so Wood Songs is trying to encourage and promote that in the music community as a whole.
Also, I think all the free you give away, you've been able to get many things that have helped you in Woodstock's done for free as well, like scoring your opera.
Yeah, well, we wrote the Woody Guthrie opera. Matter of fact, this morning, I love Henry David Thoreau. I wrote a play about Henry David Thoreau. It's been performed 9,400 times in 42 countries. This morning, I got a call from the Thoreau Society, and Ken Burns is coming out with a documentary about Thoreau in 2026. So they're resending the PBS special of the Walden play that I wrote to PBS in advance of Ken Burns' documentary. Now here's the point. I did that for free. I didn't get paid anything to do that. And yet here it is as the PBS special in front of a major public television event. If you are afraid of free, you're losing out on tremendous opportunities. And I'm going to prove it real quick, Art. Facebook is a multi-billion-dollar company. I hate them. They give their platform for what? Free. Google is a multi-billion-dollar corporation. They give out their platform for free. X. All these huge multimedia things, they give it out what? For free. Why? Because it generates an audience. So don't be afraid of doing things for free if it's going to generate a big audience for you, because that's valuable work.
We've heard all those years keeping the private showcases running at SERFA, which had to be not only, well, you got thanked a lot, but still it was a really difficult task because people are always changing and the 11:15 become in at 12:20 and it's already in the program book and all that stuff. Do you have any stories that we would enjoy from your time wrangling the
There are
showcases?
probably too many horror stories that I want to tell. But what I did notice this year, I just felt so proud of, like, I know it's always going to change from the time the schedule gets turned in to the night of the performance. I think this board did a wonderful job of making sure that there was equity in the amount of showcases people, I mean, they made it known that you shouldn't be taking up all the showcases. People were very good about doing that. And that was one of the things I had to struggle with when we decided that we were not going to let you just play all night long in every showcase room at the expense of somebody else who didn't get a showcase. And I feel like SERFA has really come a long way in making sure that there's equity and that people will have a chance. And I really want to thank Jill for making sure that names got in the program, as many as possible, in the current program, so that people who had to fill in those to be announced slots all got filled, that some of them were represented and people could find each other. So I don't know, there were lots of times when just people would decide the last minute not comment, really would hurt things. But I think that the board did an excellent job this time.
Indeed. The limitations on time and putting them in proper meeting rooms instead of hotel rooms, it makes it a lot easier, it makes it more professional. It's not so much the scramble. So, folks out here in the audience, you've been sitting around quietly. Does anyone have a question they'd like to pose to one or more of our panelists? If not, do our panelists have a question? Oh, great. So, Matthew?
Jill, who are the people in the initial formation of SERFA?
Who were the people in the initial formation of SERFA, Matthew asked?
When I accepted my SERFA award, which I usually did, I went through the history of SERFA, and it's so important, so thanks for asking. We started out very egalitarian. I had a steering committee with Randy Wynn of WMNF and Ben Scales, who was a lawyer from, help me out there, North Carolina. And then, so they were the beginning, the steering committee, and then I was later informed by Folk Alliance. It took forever to incorporate, but Denise Williams here, I put out a call for volunteers, and John Stecker, who has now passed away, Denise and John came over to my house, and we planned the first conference at MTSU over a lot of black beans and roasted chicken from Calypso Cafe. And Christine Stay was one of my, what I did is I held different retreats, and the first one was in Atlanta, that's where I found Ben, and the second retreat was in Florida. So Betty Friedrichsen, Christine Stay, they all came out of that. Ellen Buckstone wrote By My Silence, she came out of that. And then we went up to the Ozarks, and that's when this, Kim Richardson was president, and Jim McGill was on our board. But I do want to emphasize, like, you know, Denise and John, I could never have put on the first conference without their dedication, and I do miss John very much, and he was just so enthralled to be doing this. And over the years, so many people in this room have contributed to SERFA. And it's just been amazing. Different boards have come and gone, and everyone sitting in this room, by being here, you're part of the community. And I will write that SERFA history up finally.
Indeed, you should. But it is amazing how much continuity has been maintained as people change. Every 6 years, there's a full turnover on the board. We keep all going and we keep this wonderful vibe that's characterized SERFA and Farm for so many years. They're my two favorites of the regionals. I shouldn't say I have favorites, Jennifer. We'll address that later. I do love my farm. Any other questions from the audience? Well, how about panelists? Do y'all have a question from one of the other panelists?
I will say that Kari and I are doing a workshop later at 4 o'clock about how to use your music for community good and powerful results. And you're all invited to that.
I'll ask you a question, Art. So, Art, what year did you come to SERFA the first time?
First year's when I came with Lewis in 2012.
And was that at Montreat?
Yeah, that was at Montreat. I stopped at the Antioch Baptist Church breakfast and then drove on up to Asheville.
And you found your home here, and I used to refer to Art as a SERFA historian, because again, keeping all the history of traditional music and art is very well versed in that. So it's very important also, along with Denise, when she cycled off for a while, to have Art to kind of keep us straight with traditional music as well, and the history of North Carolina.
The prehistory of SERFA, I was one of the 4 people at the first attempt to start SERFA in 19, and Jim McGill, who's, I think this is the first time in years he hadn't been at SERFA, tried to start, but it didn't have the success Kari found.
And Gloria Holloway in Florida tried to start SERFA. So I appreciate that. And it did, it took years. I mean, it was conversations among people in this room and in hallways and at folk alliances. And I had Kathy Mattea and Hazel Dickens and Alice Gerard come to meetings and talk to keep that traditional thing going. It really took a lot to start this region. It's very hard to get all these different states together. And we did, and going back to starting the vibe, like I fashioned my utopia, but everyone found their place in their own utopia. And year after year, it kept happening because it felt so good. And I'm so glad that this region, it's a special region. We're very special. We have such a rich cultural history here, and we have a diversity that we aren't tapping enough of. Like we had Florida still drum music at one time. We have a huge history in New Orleans, history in Arkansas and Mississippi, and so I would encourage anyone here that has any connections, we need that. And I'd like to suggest that Michael start helping SERFA with the kids component. Go ahead and say.
It's really important to note that Kari and all the other people who started the various folk alliance regions, heretofore all these regions have been self-supporting. They get assistance from Folk Alliance International, but until next fiscal year, which starts July 1, the regions have all had to finance themselves. But finally, in the next fiscal year, Folk Alliance International will begin the revenue sharing long ago promised to the various regions, which do drive many, many members into Folk Alliance International from there to conference.
I want to make a correction. The revenue sharing technically started May of last year, but it won't be dispersed until we have the regional.
Thanks, Jennifer. And that is Jennifer Rowe, the Executive Director of Folk Alliance International. Very pleased to have them here. I know for Jennifer, it's her first SERFA. We moved it much closer to Kansas City, so don't worry.
I don't think it was easier to get here.
Well, I think that has filled up the time allotted to us today. I appreciate all of you sticking around after lunch for Wisdom of the Elders. This is my favorite thing. I I do all year, and I've been privileged to do it twice for the international too. It's always a fun conversation with people I think the world of. So please express your thanks to Roberta Schultz, Grady Ormsby, Kari Estrin, and Michael Johnathon.
If you folks don't mind, I'd like to put a closure on this. And it's something that I stole from journalists. Some of you songs are used to sticking riffs and rhythms and melodies and all. I stole this from the journalists. A good journalist asks 6 questions. And those of you who have heard this before, you can respond if you would. And the first question is, what? Love. Who? Everybody. Where? Everywhere. When? All the time. How? Unconditionally. Why? Because that's all there is. And if you hadn't got your hug yet, ambush me or track me down.